Baltimore and hitting walk-offs and seeing the Yankees and the Orioles, and of course the Orioles and the Indians all weekend long. We head to Cincinnati for Ravens and Bengals action on Sunday. Luke Jones is on the backfields in Owings Mills, and we'll be monitoring all things around here. Even get ready for that Towson, Maryland game this week. But lo and behold, this segment is not about any of those things. This segment is about one of my favorite passions. Ed Frankovic is back joining us again. It's been about 2 months since we've caught up, and the TJ Oshie signing and lots of news out of the Caps. Ed, first off, welcome back. Happy end of summer. Happy beginning of the hockey season. The Caps are taking the ice this week down at Kettler. It is already hockey season. Crazy enough, right?
Another reason to like the start of the NFL season is the Capitals get right back on the ice, and we're a little over a month from the opening game. So it's coming up fast, and it's been a busy off season. A lot of changes on the fringes. You know, they're still built well up the middle, and some really strong defense and great goaltending. And this is still a very good Caps hockey team, despite what you may have seen or read elsewhere over the summer. This is going to be a team that's going to contend for a championship once again.
Well, let's go through this. The first things first. The reason I'm calling you, believe it or not, is my wife said to me when we convened on Monday night, sitting around watching television, she's like, hey, did you hear Ovechkin lost a lot of weight over the summer? And I'm like, no, I did not hear that. You know, I don't know. The Ovechkin news didn't make it to me. But there is, you know, there's been some change in the Capitals. But one thing that has to change is, you know, Alex Ovechkin needs to hoist the cup. And this will fall on him. I know at various points last year we talked about everyone but him. But coming into training camp, when it gets going again, this story will move to Alex Ovechkin and probably to Barry Trotz's job security. And the question of, will this incredible era, this glorious team that was built to win over the last 2 years and has been not much this side of disappointing, will they ever win? And we won't be able to answer that till May or June, right?
No, we won't. We won't. And it's going to be a different year. It's not going to be a lot of pressure. There's always pressure in sports. You know, everybody wants to win. But it's going to have a different feel to it. Last season, every game you expected the Capitals to win because they were just loaded. They had an unbelievable roster, and when it came down to it, they couldn't beat Pittsburgh again. A lot of people say it's mental, conditioning. I felt conditioning was a big factor. Mental certainly was, and conditioning. Getting back to the Ovechkin story, yeah, he was probably about 20 pounds overweight. When I wrote my end of the season blog, one of the big things I focused on was conditioning, and not just the number 8, the grade 8. But Nicholas Backstrom, John Carlson, everybody down the lineup needed to get in better conditioning because I really felt that Pittsburgh was able to find a little bit of another gear with their, yes, they were fast, but they also seemed to be able to keep their pace up a little more, and they seemed to have a little more in that Game 7 than the Caps did. And you can argue that was mental too, but yeah, Ovechkin's in great shape. Waiting to get the reports on Backstrom. I know John Carlson's going into the last year of his contract. There's not been a lot of talk about that. But I'm expecting a monster year from number 74. I'm expecting 50 goals from Ovechkin. Barry Trotz went out to visit him in Russia to see him. So that news leaked out last week. So a lot happening with the Caps. Ovechkin, as soon as you see the picture of when he came back, and I tweeted this out on Twitter, you could just see right away his face was thin, he's trimmed down, and then it was confirmed by other players in the locker room. Ovi still hasn't talked to the media yet, and I can't blame him for that. I'd wait till camp opens. But you got to be encouraged by what you're hearing.
Well, give me the rest of the pieces around him as you see it. I mean, clearly the Oshie thing was the highlight of the offseason, but, you know, losing a nice defensive player to the Las Vegas Golden Knights or the Vegas Golden Knights, and the Caps will play there this year. I mean, you know, there's plenty of stories for the Caps, but it always does come back to, you know, are they going to win the Cup? But on a player-by-player basis, we thought this thing would be a lot worse over the offseason than it was. They've returned a much more formidable group than we probably thought they were going to return back in April on the night they were eliminated.
Yeah, if you look at what Brian McClellan did, he focused on up the middle of the ice and goaltending and, you know, trying to keep his D together. They would have loved to have kept Nate Schmidt. There's no doubt about it. But the fact of the matter was there was an expansion. They were going to lose a good player. And they chose to expose Schmidt rather than go with protect 4 defensemen, which would have left them vulnerable at maybe losing a Lars Eller or a Marcus Johansson or even a Tom Wilson for nothing.
Well, they could have lost Grubauer, too, and that would have not been so good.
Yeah, and George McVie's strategy out in Vegas is clearly to make a run on defense, and whether that's going to work or not, it remains to be seen. I think he made a lot of mistakes in what he did because he had a top 4 defenseman in Mark Method, and he ends up trading him to Dallas for a second-round pick in 2020. So where McClellan keeps Johansson, they knew they were going to have problems with the salary cap with the Kuznetsov and the Orlov contracts coming in, and he ends up getting a second and third next year out of Johansson. So as much as the uproar on Twitter was about that, I still don't think that was a bad move. You look at where they lost. They lost to Justin Williams. They lost to Marcus Johansson on the wing. They lost to Carl Alsner. Those were the key, and then Nate Schmidt. Those were the key losses, but they knew they were going to lose Williams and Alsner. They knew there was no way they were going to keep them. Johansson was probably going to go just because he's $4.5 million, and they have guys in the wings. They have Burakovsky. They need to step up. They have Jacob Verana ready to go. Brett Connolly's going to get an increased role that they were able to bring back cheap. So these are the guys they're looking for Tom Wilson to play more minutes next year. So they have guys that they feel that can step into these roles.
Well, Tom Wilson's really emerged. I mean, Tom Wilson's become a better hockey player. I don't think there's any doubt about that, right?
Yeah, and the Toronto Maple Leafs series proved that. He scored 3 goals in that series. And he had let's be honest, he had more goals than Marcus Johansson did in the playoffs last year. What does that tell you right there? I mean, he's learned. He's definitely improved his game with his two-way game under Trotz, and then he became a very good penalty killer, and then the offense is starting to come. So they're hoping for that progression. They'd like to see 15 goals out of him this year. He's going to play third-line right wing. If he can get 15 goals, boy, that's going to be a heck of a deal at $2 million for Tom Wilson this year. It's not about fighting anymore. That's going out of the game. I know that makes you happy. It makes me happy. It's a different game. He's transformed himself into a different player, and I'd like to see him take that power that he brings to his game and get it to the front of the net and get more goals.
I saw the quote from McClellan about the game is getting faster, that Ovechkin's going to have to train in a different way, more speed instead of power, and that's where his game's going to have to be, given his skill set is incredible in his 30s, right? I mean, he's sort of in that same spot that Joe Flacco's in right now where, the skills can deteriorate, but the head's got to be smarter, and you got to take better care of your body at that point. And I guess for Ovechkin in the long grind of the season, maybe clearly to get in this kind of shape based on the picture that we saw, he has put more effort in this summer. It's going to be impossible to argue his effort if he comes into camp looking this good next week.
Yeah, he used to train for power, right? Bulk, power, hit you, he's going to hurt you. He changed that. He did a lot more running, a lot more cardio. And that's what you need in this game. I mean, he's still going to be a big guy. If you're a defenseman, you're still not going to want to get hit by that guy in the corner because he's going to hurt you. Anybody you talk to in the league say, when you get hit by Alex Ovechkin, it hurts. But the speed of the game, yeah, he's a heavy hockey player.
He's a heavy hockey player.
That's still going to be a part of the Capitals game. But I still go back to the hit he took from Kadri in the Maple Leaf series, and I think that was the one that really sent them spiraling downwards. And, I heard from people around the Caps all season about his conditioning wasn't there last year. They didn't really have a training camp last year with the World Cup of Hockey. He trained with the Russians, and then they played the World Cup of Hockey, and then he came in.
Trotz wasn't even around last year, right? I mean, that's how you didn't even have your coach around for the games, right?
You had 8 or 9 guys that were playing in that World Cup of Hockey last fall. The Capitals really never really had a camp where they could just have their own guys there, and that's going to be different this year, and I think that's something good to look forward to. But I really think you're going to see, if Ovechkin has that speed, he's going to be able to avoid those type of hits, and he's going to be able to get away from that. He's going to be able to, score more of those goals that we saw from him early in his career, where we get the puck in his own end and be able to go down the ice quickly. And we actually saw him do that in, I think it was Game 5 against Pittsburgh, where he went end to end and turned Ron Hainsey around and scored the goal that made it 4-2 to kind of close that game out against Pittsburgh that started to come back before they fell on their face in Game 7.
Ed Frankovic joining us here. It is all things hockey right now as the Caps are taking the ice again next week. There is a media day, and I just wanted to slide Ed in here and sneak a little Rock the Red in here to let everybody know that the Caps are hitting the ice. We're not going to do too much, you and me, this month, right? I mean, from a training camp perspective, most of the jobs are won here for the Caps. This is a get in shape kind of camp. They will be a cup contender again this year. I don't know that they're the favorite, right, Ed? I mean, the Penguins will continue to be that because of the way they've shown up at the end of the year and the players and the stars that they return. But the Caps are certainly a top 5 bet to win the Stanley Cup this year, right?
I'd agree with that. The Penguins are definitely going to be one of the favorites. They're returning a lot of guys, although they did lose their third and fourth line center. They lost Nick Bonino, a guy who's killed the Capitals in the last 2 playoffs, and another guy who's really hurt the Capitals in the playoffs, Matt Cullen. Matt Cullen's out in Minnesota. So Bonino's with the Predators. The Penguins do get Chris Letang back on the back end. I mean, that's going to be big for Pittsburgh because their defense was their weakness, and they were able to overcome that with some stellar goaltending by Marc-Andre Fleury and then Matt Murray. Now, Marc-Andre Fleury is now in Vegas, so but the Penguins did bring in Antti Niemi. So the Penguins are still right there. What I like about the Capitals is up the middle, they're really strong. When you look at Backstrom, Kuznetsov, and Lars Eller, and then Jay Beagle as the fourth line center. The jobs that are up for spots in camp will be the right wing and the left wing on the fourth line. And then you got potentially 2 defenseman spots, likely 1, because I really think Taylor Chorney's still going to be in the lineup somewhere. You got the top pair, the Capitals' top pair, Matt Niskanen and Dmitry Orlov. That's a very, very good defensive pair, arguably one of the best defensive pairs in the league. So the Capitals are set there. Brooks Orpik is probably going to be that lefty on the third pair. I really think that the guy who's most likely to get that will be Madison Bowie, who's got a lot of potential. Played well in Hershey last year, got injured, took a laceration to his leg, and that cost him a couple months. But he's got a lot of potential. I talked to a scout from another team in the league, and he was really surprised that when the Capitals traded for Kevin Shattenkirk, that St. Louis didn't demand Madison Bowie in that trade. So the Capitals caught a bit of a break there. And then our buddy Aaron Ness, I really think he's the lead to get that other left defenseman spot with John Carlson. I really think that Ness can play like Nate Schmidt did. He's not Nate Schmidt, but I think he can play like he did with Carlson, and I think that pair can have some success. And then you got Christian Jews as an outside shot in there, too. And this kid, Jyrki Jokipaka, they just signed from Calgary. He's played 150 games in the league. Well, they didn't sign him. They sent him to a tryout contract. So there's going to be competition for some of these spots, but the top-end guys are still there for the Capitals.
I'm going to get my nasty Ness Caps jersey. You know, I don't own an official Caps jersey. All my jerseys are Skipjacks jerseys from 2 decades ago. I've never actually owned a Capitals jersey, you know, like a gamer. I got hats, I got shirts, I got stuff. But if I'm going to get one, I'm going to get an Aaron Ness jersey. What do you think of that?
Well, we were gonna have the Aaron Ness training camp watch then.
All right, well, that's good, man. He's 27 years old. It's time to get him up here, right?
Yeah, he played a couple years ago up with the team and actually played very well.
He's an American. He's from Minnesota. Yeah, I mean, right, exactly.
Very fast player, very similar speed. He's in size to Schmidt. Doesn't have the shot that Schmidt has, but he played very well in Hershey last year. He played very well when he was up in the 2015-16 season, and so they're pretty high on him, but he just wasn't able to crack the lineup with Schmidt and Orlov ahead of him. He plays that similar style, but those guys were just better. So, but I think he's got a very good chance to be in there. The dollars work because they are up against the salary cap. It's a salary cap league. I think he's the front runner to get that spot with John Carlson.
He is Ed Frankovic. He covers all things Capitals for us out on Twitter. But you're watching the Orioles and the Ravens and all that stuff and opining out at Ed Frankovic on Twitter from time to time. Hey, dude, enjoy camp. I mean, I'll check back in a couple of weeks. I just wanted to do a little hockey segment here and sort of reintroduce things and reset things after Labor Day, that it's not just a baseball and a football and a Terps week as well. Terps with a big win this week, so plenty of stuff going on, including Alex Ovechkin thinning down and leaner and hopefully meaner heading into training camp. Ed, take care of yourself. I know you're busy these days, and with hockey coming, I know you're excited about that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the Capitals. Got my kids stuff going on. I got the Orioles, the Terps, and the Ravens. It's a great time. It's good to be a sports fan around here.
Happy September. We'll be checking in a little bit more frequently beginning next month. Great to have you on, Ed.
Anytime, Ness. Take care.
You got it. Ed Frankovic, our Capitals historian, blogger, insider, and expert on all things hockey. So there, a little hockey piece to get you going into the weekend this weekend. I'm headed off to Cincinnati with the Bengals and the Ravens. And, of course, the Orioles are headed off to Northern Ohio to take on the surging Cleveland Indians. Orioles now on the brink of this second wild card. Exciting times on Tuesday night with the Machado walk-off. So, it would have been nice if more people were awake, but it was 12:52 in the morning. And late night, very, very wet baseball this weekend, and I can't think with the storm coming through, it's going to be any different headed into the weekend. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.